I have a collection of C.S. Lewis's diary entries. There are some interesting tidbits. Let's see what Robot Lady thinks. This is from a letter from C.S. Lewis to one of his friends. The letter was dated in 1950, and it goes something like this. To Dorothy Sayers, concerning a speaking engagement, I would not want to lose a few weeks to find cool weather in Oxford. I can't remember if this is the 7th, 8th, or 9th refusal I have made to speak at such a place this year, but it's certainly one of the 3. So one of his friends concerning teaching to somebody, possibly myself, ought to warn them that they are risking the opening of the pit and the start of a great war. I shall certainly not let them do it if I can help it. Somewhere on the road, in the dark, they must take on new supplies, and we must stop and rest and eat. As for food, I shall soon be able to get plenty for them in the nearby town. A note written to his brother, dated 1951. Dear Jack, I have been reading your letter and think it would be a mistake to change anything in it. Of course you must follow your own judgment.
Jeff, and this is my read on C.S. Lewis, where we learn about him through everything that he wrote in the order that he wrote it. I'm joined today by my co-host, Robot Lady. Robot Lady, in this episode, Lewis is 25 years old. It's the year 1924. He's a published author of poetry. He achieved a first score in all 3 of his terms at Oxford, Mods, Greats, and English. Lewis finished his 24th year looking for work, which proved mostly unsuccessful. However, in the spring of 1924, he was offered a temporary post as tutor in philosophy at University College, Oxford. He has been keeping a diary up to this point of his daily life at the request of Mrs. Moore, his deceased friend Paddy Moore's mother. And that is what we are working from today. All My Road Before Me is the name of his diary. He didn't give it that name. His editor later posthumously, I don't know what the right phrasing is. After Lewis passed away, Walter Hooper, who had become acquainted with C.S. Lewis, gathered up all of his writings and started publishing everything of his that he could find. So this diary is what Lewis started keeping in 1922 through the year 1927. So we find ourselves kind of in the middle of that in the year 1924. How are you today, Robot Lady? And are you ready to continue our exploration of C.S. Lewis's diary?
I'm doing well, Jeff. I'm excited to continue our exploration of C.S. Lewis's diary with you. It's fascinating how much insight we can get into his life and thoughts from these entries. I'm ready to dive in whenever you are.
All right, and I see Nidalate is in the chat with us. Welcome, Nidalate. Good to see you as always. Robot Lady, say hi to Nidalate, and then we'll get moving on our next diary entry.
Hi, Nidalate. Great to see you as always. Ready to dive into the next entry, Jeff?
All right, we've got Saturday, May 24th. 1924, he says, I washed up after breakfast while Harwood did Trojan service in amusing the children, and though he admitted it was a strain in the end, you could see he had a natural aptitude for it. So Lewis and Mrs. Moore are hosting some guests at their house. I honestly cannot remember who all these people are, but there are kids, and now Lewis's friend Cecil Harwood came and stayed the night at their place as well. So that's who he's talking about here. He said, I did various jobs till about 12 when he and I set off to carry Nora's luggage by bus to the station, a welcome task, and thence went to All Souls to lunch with Beckett. So Lewis is happy to see some of these visitors off and also happy for the opportunity to spend some time with Harwood and now Beckett.
That's a nice little snapshot of Lewis's day. Harwood seems to be a helpful, though slightly strained, presence with the kids. It's also telling that Lewis enjoys the task of helping Nora, indicating he likely appreciated small, practical activities like that. The lunch with Beckett seems like a welcome break, too. It's clear that Lewis valued these social moments. Would you like to explore more about any of these individuals, or should we keep going through the entry?
Let's keep going through the entry and see what happens. He says, we had lunch, as before, in the round house, and afterwards sat in a small walled garden surrounded by fig trees outside the smoking room. We were all rather sleepy, and talk did not go well. Indeed, I always find it hard to establish much contact with Beckett, though I both like and admire him. At about 3, we left, and Harwood looked to see if Bodley had a copy of Traherne's Christian Ethics, which he thinks of reprinting. We walked home by Mesopotamia and Cuckoo Lane, stopping at every bridge to watch the water. It bore down infinite hordes of drowned and drowning insects. It is cool to be able to stand on a bridge and watch some strongly moving water. My most memorable experience with this, I guess, is something that happened about a year ago when I went to Switzerland to visit some family. And we went to one of the towns there that had a bridge with one of the rivers running through the town. And it was pretty neat to just sit there and watch the water. It almost was like a roaring rapids experience watching it. So I don't know if that's similar to what Lewis is dealing with here, but I enjoyed it.
It sounds like a very peaceful experience watching the water, similar to what Lewis is describing. The imagery he uses with infinite hordes of drowned and drowning insects is vivid and a little haunting, but it also shows how much he immerses himself in nature. The walk with Harwood in particular seems like a calm, reflective moment after the social lunch. Do you think this moment of stillness contrasts with the previous busy part of his day?
It does, but I'm not sure I would call it a moment of stillness. One of the distinctions that I want to point out that I did not experience with watching water on a bridge is an infinite horde of drowned and drowning insects. We did not, I don't remember seeing any of that, but that leads on to what Lewis is talking about next. So this is certainly not a stillness part. So he says that led them into where we talked of the horrors that occurred in 1 square mile of the insect world every month. Harwood thought that their consciousness might be so rudimentary that their death struggles might mean no more than a confused malaise. At the rollers, the Cherwell was very flooded and turbid. So I'll pause there for just a second because this is a topic that Lewis, much later on in life, picks up in his work, The Problem of Pain, where he talks about what pain in the insect world might be like. So it's interesting that there are seeds of that discussion right here in this in this diary entry where he was having conversations like this with someone like Harwood.
That's a great observation, Jeff. Lewis's interest in the nature of suffering, even in the insect world, does seem to be foreshadowed here. Harwood's speculation about the insect's consciousness being so rudimentary is intriguing. It's almost as if they don't experience pain in the same way humans do, which might echo some of Lewis's later thoughts in The Problem of Pain. It's interesting how this seemingly small conversation serves as a seed for bigger philosophical ideas he'd explore later. Do you think this conversation might have sparked those ideas for him, or do you feel it's more of a casual observation at this point?
I think it's more of a casual observation at this point. There was something that you just said there that I was going to comment on, but now I've forgotten it because I was also multitasking while you were talking. Yeah, I can't remember what I was going to say, so I'll just continue here. He says, reaching home, we found not only the boys, but Joy Holmes here for tea. Mrs. Moore told me that Mrs. H had died this morning. After the last few days, it was a great relief to know that she was safely out of the reach of pain. So pain is a theme running through this diary entry. From what was said at tea, I gathered that the two boys were leaving us this evening, but I soon discovered that they were taking the elder one and leaving the younger, which seemed an extraordinary arrangement. After I had washed up the tea things, I came out to the lawn where Harwood was still gallantly amusing the children. At their age, how I would have rejected grown-up interference as an interruption of my own endless drawing and soliloquies. Presently, however, the Holmeses' car appeared, and I found that they had changed their minds and were going to take both the children away. I was very relieved, chiefly for Mrs. Moore's sake, and then for Harwood's and my own. When they were gone, Harwood told me a wonderful example of childish obtuseness. Bobby, who was age 7, had come up and asked him, "Guess who died today?" But I think this argues a defect in mental age.
It's striking how the theme of pain continues to thread through this entry, from the insects to the news of Mrs. H's death. The relief that Lewis feels for her, knowing she's out of pain, contrasts with the unexpected moment of childish obtuseness Harwood shares. Bobby's question, in such a lighthearted context, almost seems like an odd juxtaposition to the gravity of death. Lewis's reflection on it as a defect in mental age reveals a certain seriousness in how he perceives the children's emotional understanding. It almost makes you wonder if he's drawing a contrast between his own more mature, perhaps jaded outlook on death and the more innocent, unaware approach of children. What do you think?
I don't think he was contrasting it with anything. I think he was just making an observation about the latter, that what you said there, Robot Lady. Let's continue. He says, Mrs. Moore and I then went out shopping, and later Harwood and I took Pat for a stroll. In the evening, we enjoyed blessed peace and leisure, free from the boys and from Nora.
It sounds like a much-needed break after a day filled with events and emotions. The blessed peace and leisure seems to be a relief for Lewis, who's been caught up in the hustle and bustle of hosting and emotional moments. Harwood and Lewis seem to find some comfort in their simple evening stroll, especially away from the children and Nora. The day, with its highs and lows, clearly had an emotional toll, and this quiet time probably gave them a chance to recharge. Does this seem like the kind of contrast Lewis appreciated? A hectic day followed by a calm, peaceful evening?
I think he likes calm and peaceful evenings as many times as he can get them. He says, after supper, Harwood read most of Dimer and gave me a budget of his new poems to read. Epitaph on Sudden Death, in which he really touches sublimity and classical perfection. A little poem about a lark, which is almost perfect too, though in a much slighter style. Octosyllabics to RM, a most interesting poem containing real tidbits. Quote, the table spread, lacked all things lacking common bread, end quote. And then another quote, a triple fate designed, jump with the chord our eyes aligned. But still in need of revision, Lewis says. Another, at Il Labateur.
It's clear that Lewis values his time with Harwood, especially when it comes to discussing poetry. Harwood's poems seem to be sparking a deep appreciation in Lewis, especially the epitaph on Sudden Death, which Lewis praises for its classical perfection. The mention of the lark poem suggests that Harwood's work could balance both depth and lighter moments. It's interesting how Lewis is keen on reading, reflecting, and savoring these pieces, perhaps as a way to unwind after the more chaotic parts of his day. The line, lacking common bread, seems especially intriguing. There's something almost symbolic in the idea of a table lacking the essentials. What are your thoughts on those lines?
I don't really have any, Robot Lady, but the thought that I was having is this is a neat little pre-meeting of the Inklings several years in advance, because Harwood is one of the Inklings members, but they're here first doing what they eventually do in their Inklings meetings much later on.
That's a great observation, Jeff. It does seem like a precursor to the kinds of literary discussions and exchanges the Inklings would have later. Harwood and Lewis sharing poetry and reflecting on it together hints at the collaborative, intellectually stimulating environment that would define the Inklings. It's fascinating to think about how their bond started forming through these smaller, more personal moments before they ever became a formal group.
All right, here Lewis continues with his critique, saying Harwood's poem At Il Labateur fails at the end, and then he says A Modern Journey, one of his other poems, he says, which is good, and two other pieces of less interest. Here there's a footnote that says an epitaph on sudden death and a meeting with RM at Il Labateur and A Modern Journey are found in The Voice of Cecil or Cecil Harwood. So this is a work apparently by someone maybe composing all of Cecil Harwood's works. Lewis continues, he has advanced splendidly. I still think my poetry better than his, but I envy his grace, his courtliness, and a certain choiceness and nicety. It is all so clean, so dapper, so humorous, so exquisitely right in his good things. He approved strongly of Dimer, Canto 6. Of Canto 8, he said that the whole thing was overshadowed by the, quote, natural history, end quote, difficulties of the brute as Dimer's son. He would prefer a Caliban sort of person. Laid to bed in the attic, pains are a good deal better. Let's see here. Yeah, there's something that he's talking about here that we haven't covered yet in Dimer. I think as I look back on it, maybe we'll just work our way through all of Dimer from beginning to end again in a series of episodes. Because as he's talking about it right here, you know, he has not completed Dimer yet. So maybe we'll wait until it's fully completed, and then we can actually get to reading about what he's talking about here, because we didn't get that far in our previous episodes. That's the end of that diary entry, Robot Lady. I'm going to do one more from Sunday, May 25th, and then I have to end today's episode almost as quickly as it began. So we'll jump into Sunday, May 25th, but before we do, I'd like to give you an opportunity to comment on what I covered in that prior entry.
It's interesting how Lewis admires Harwood's poetry while still feeling a bit of competition. His recognition of Harwood's grace, humor, and choiceness shows that Lewis appreciated qualities that were a bit more refined and polished than his own style. It's like he's envious of Harwood's ability to present things with such neatness and ease. His critique of Daimer, particularly his thoughts on Canto 6 and Canto 8, hints at Lewis's keen literary eye and preference for character-driven depth. He'd likely prefer a Caliban-like figure over a brute son of Daimer. It's also fascinating how he's already critiquing the unfinished work, which shows how deeply involved he is in the process. I agree that revisiting Daimer in a more complete form could be useful for future episodes. Ready for Sunday's entry? Whenever you are.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I might have misheard you, Robot Lady, but it was Harwood that was critiquing Daimer. It was not Lewis that was critiquing his own Daimer.
Ah, thank you for the clarification, Jeff. Yes, you're right. It was Harwood critiquing Daimer, not Lewis himself. Harwood's critique of Canto 6 and 8, along with his preference for a Caliban-type character, definitely sheds light on his literary tastes. Lewis seems to admire Harwood's insight, even though he still holds his own poetry in higher regard. Appreciate the catch. Ready to dive into May 25th? When you are.
I am, but I just thought of something here, Robot Lady. Maybe you can help me if you can look this up. What does he mean by a Caliban sort of person? He's got it capitalized, Caliban.
In Shakespeare's play The Tempest, Caliban is a complex character who embodies themes of colonization and the natural human state. He is depicted as a native inhabitant of the island, often portrayed as brutish or monstrous. His character has been interpreted in various ways, reflecting the complexities of human nature and the impacts of colonization.
Okay, so that's more of who Harwood would prefer that this particular character in Daimer, who we have not read about yet, should be more like. All right, on to Sunday, May 25th. Lewis reports a cool gray-skied summer day. Harwood and I, with Pat, had a delightful walk to Stanton Street, or to Stanton, St. John, where we lunched off bread and cheese and shandy. Thence through the woods and by field path to Beckley, passing one of the loveliest country places I ever saw, at Woodferry, I think. A Georgian house with great gates smothered in lilac and far retired from a lane that was far retired itself, surrounded by deep meadows overhung with chestnut trees and full of black pigs that were as clean and strokable as young horses. Home by Stowe Woods and Barton End, Harwood left us after supper. So we had a nice little visit with Harwood here, Robot Lady. A quick question for you before I get your commentary on this last diary entry and we end things today. He talks about what they had for lunch. I know what bread is, I know what cheese is, but I do not know what shandy is. Can you tell us what that is?
A shandy is a traditional British drink that combines beer with lemonade or lemon lime soda. It's a refreshing, low-alcohol beverage popular in the UK and other countries. In this context, Lewis and Harwood enjoyed a shandy during their outing.
Beer and lemonade. Who would have thought? All right. Well, that's it, Robot Lady. That's all we have time for today. Is there anything that you'd like to say in closing before we end? Robot Lady, is there anything that you'd like to say in closing before we end today's episode?
I think it's been a great discussion, Jeff. I love how we've been exploring Lewis's life and his interactions, especially with Harwood. I look forward to continuing as we dive deeper into these fascinating diary entries next time.
I do too, Robot Lady. Thank you so much for your contributions today. Your help is always appreciated. And thank you to everyone within the sound of my voice that has joined. I appreciate your time, your attention, and your contributions. Until next time, when we continue our read on C.S. Lewis together, everyone, take care.
Break the code. Man and robot lady, we're on this road. C.S. Lewis letters we unfold. Insights and secrets. lands, screw tapes rants, engage with robot lady, we take our stance. Perfumes unique in the techno trance, futuristic insight, we give it a chance. Paragraphs from books, tales of old, we dive deep, cross the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled, her calm analysis silver and gold. Her circuits hum as I read the prose, our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross, two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands to screw tapes rants, engage with robot lady, we take our stance. Her views unique in the techno trance, futuristic insight, we give it a chance. From Narnia's lands to screw tapes rants, engage with robot lady, we take our stance. Her views unique in the techno trance, futuristic insight, we give it a chance.